the conversation took a weird turn. I was like, okay, I'm out. So I blocked the number. The following night, the phone woke me up at like 3 a.m. Same thing, 2 calls and then a text. And he called me a fat N-word whore. And I was so traumatized by it, and just trying to process it and trying to get through it, I wrote a bit. And so in the bit, I explained what had happened. And then I dropped he called me a fat N-word. I said the whole word whore, and like the air gets sucked out of the room, like like this. And I was like, yeah, he said I was fat. And that just
Yeah.
like broke the tension. And yeah, and like it felt good, because I was like, that's funny, like that's funny. you know
It's Johnny Late Night! And now here's your host, Johnny Rogers!
If you want to get these episodes before anyone else without all the ads, because these YouTube ads are out of control, I don't control them. But if you want to avoid all those, you got to go to patreon.com/the Johnny Rogers. You'll get the episode early. You'll get to hear it before anyone else. It's bragging rights in and of itself. And it's like $1. It's less than a cup of coffee. I think that's how people usually advertise it. But my guest today, since performing her first set in September of 2019, she has performed throughout Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, and Nunavut, breaking down barriers and shattering glass ceilings wherever she goes. This includes being one of only 3 people to have won both the Absolute Comedy and the Yuck Yucks competition, which, if you're not from Canada, that's a huge, huge deal. A regular comedy club performer and touring comic, she is known for her soft-spoken delivery, sweet demeanor, and hilarious unexpected punchlines, which I can account for. Her dream is to one day appear at Montreal's Story Just for Laughs Festival, and I'm pretty sure she's well on her way to getting there. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further delay, please welcome Simone Holder.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You like my long ranting? Pulled that from your website, so it's your fault that it's
It's my fault.
You gotta bring it down to 180 characters. No, you should have a longer like biography, and then have this is for podcast intros.
Yes, exactly. You click here for podcast intros.
Yeah. It just shortens the text, and you're like, I got it. Okay,
there
cool.
it is.
But I just did your podcast, Shooting the Breeze. I don't know if you want to promote any of your own things for people to go check out.
Yes, I have my podcast is in season 4, called Shooting the Breeze, and I talk to mainly comedians, but usually people in the entertainment industry, just about life, about their journey so far, and it's always an interesting and fun conversation. And you were kind enough to spend an hour or so with me yesterday on the podcast.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
And that one will come out, I believe you said, like March 12th, if you guys want to
March
check that out.
12th. Yes,
Yeah,
March
I'll post a
12th,
link to the episode within this episode, and it'll be like podcast crossover. It's
Inception.
The multiverse of Ontario podcasts. Wow, this guy's on there too. That's crazy. What a concept.
It's like, wow.
And they can go to smokecomedy.ca. If you are in Ontario, there's tons of shows for you to hit up, especially in Ottawa, but there's also Toronto shows as well.
Yes, I'll be in Toronto this weekend coming.
Nice.
Yes.
So as the people know who are listeners of this podcast, we always pick a word from the guests that they give based around something that you kind of want to start a conversation on, and you chose hope. So I just have to say, like, what does the word hope mean to you? Or why did it come to mind?
Why did it come to mind? Because I found that especially the last few months, I've been feeling more optimistic is maybe too strong a word, but feeling more hopeful about.
How dare you?
I know, how dare I? But I have some goals and things that I want to. I'd love to accomplish, short term and long term, and I find that in order to stay on track or get on track, I have to have hope that what I'm doing, staying the course and what I'm doing is going to help me get to that goal.
Yeah. And
In all different
so-
aspects of life, not just with comedy,
And it's a good word too, because exactly what you just said, it like carries over into things that are beyond just comedy. Like I think
Mhm.
just it's so much better to have hope when you're looking at like how your brain interprets its environment, right? And like when you start looking around and being uneasy and having like these thoughts of doubt and like kind of, what's the point? And there, there's so many moments of like that happen for people. It's it starts to take over your body. Like
Yeah.
your whole body starts to feel bad based on the thoughts that you just had, right? And it's
Exactly.
something as simple as just thinking like, well, when times have gotten bad before, did they stay bad? It's like, no, they did get better. Okay, so now I have an example in my own life, and now I can hope that will happen again with this situation.
Right.
And that just the thought of the open door to
Exactly.
possibilities of what could happen. I mean, it even goes back to like when you started into stand-up comedy, because you were saying to me before that for years you had kind of been like, do I do it? Do I not do it? Like you didn't have the confidence to go for it.
Mhm.
You not going for it and having the hope that something would come of it, like it would have led so many other people's lives down a different path too, right?
Right.
Beyond just like your own hope and happiness, like you going for it and having the hope that it's going to work out and actually acting on that thing instead of just shuddering away from it, it then sparks like all these new timelines, like going back to the
True.
multiverse thing, but like it's
Yes.
true, right? Like
It's
every
true.
action has an equal or greater reaction. And that's
Yes.
true with how people like, guide themselves through life.
Mhm. It opens up all these other spider webs,
Yeah, yeah. Like hope
and
leads to possibilities, which leads
exactly.
to like things that you can actually do. Now you have something tangible that you can actually focus your attention on.
Exactly. And I find that it's like when you were talking earlier about how like negative feelings, just your negative mindset encompasses everything. It clouds everything. And if you have that one little glimmer of hope, that changes just changes your outlook, because it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that things are going to be easy, or there aren't going to be any obstacles or obstacles, or I can't think of the other word, but or roadblocks or things like
Yeah.
that. It doesn't mean that it's going to go swimmingly with no issues. It just means that if you keep applying yourself, if you keep working hard or doing step by step, day by day, set by set, depending on what it is, that
Yeah. When it comes to
it'll
comedy,
happen.
set by set.
Yeah. Step by step, that you also can't let one misstep
Mhm.
derail you, that you just keep going,
Yeah.
or
And I
think of your
noticed
goal, and
people phrase it differently, but I like how you phrase it as like just having hope, because it makes it a lot more simple for
Mhm.
a person to understand. Like, but I've read multiple concepts about this same thing. Like Ryan Holiday, I think he wrote the obstacle is the way. And it's essentially just that, like looking at the roadblocks in your life and realizing that like that thing that you're shying away from is the thing that you need to conquer, that you need to go towards and get over that fear, and it'll open up those world's possibilities.
Right.
The War of Art with Stephen Pressfield, he talks about resistance and how that's a compass to what you need to do. So they're all saying the same thing. And they're basically saying like, just have hope that you can overcome that thing, whether it's a
Yes.
fear or it's something that you want to try. Like, even if you're a beginner, right, you have the hope that you're going to get better at it. And we know that repetition equals success. I mean, that
Yes.
even works in like joke structure, like just
Mhm.
repeating the same thing. All of a sudden you can get like a huge laugh on it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
like
That it's
laws
just
to
that
the
little bit.
universe.
I know. I think we solved it.
I think we got the cheat codes. All right,
Exactly.
guys, no more podcasts. You're
Yeah.
done. We don't need to do any more podcasts.
We don't need it anymore like this.
We're figuring it
We
out
figured
right
it out
here.
in real time.
Yeah. Hey, history's got to start somewhere, right? Starting here. But I don't want to tell your story, so let's get into like how you started when did you do your first set? Like, how did that, what was the thought process going into that, and get that out there?
Well, I did my first set in September of 2019. And that was about 37 years after I told myself I wanted to do stand-up comedy. So I started late. I saw Eddie Murphy's Raw, or was it Raw? Delirious. When I was like 14 or 15 years old, and was just blown away because at that point, I thought that comedians were old, like old men sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because the only comedians I knew of were like George Burns, who was like 100 years old then, Bill Cosby, Bob Newhart, like all these old, in my 15-year-old brain, old men. I'd never seen women doing comedy or anything. And so when I saw Delirious, I was like just blown away. Mind you, Eddie Murphy seemed old to me at the time when I was 15.
But he's like
he was only
19.
He's 20 or something.
He's
a kid himself. He was a baby. Exactly. And just the fact that he was so young, and he was talking about stuff that I could relate to, and he was just making people laugh, that it was just something about it that really resonated with me. And I remember telling my best friend that I wanted to do that. And she was like, that would be, you could do it. You could do it, sort of thing. I didn't know how I was going to do it because I was painfully shy, and I was scared. So I just, instead of pursuing it, I just immersed myself in it. So I would go to the video store and like rent VHS tapes, watch those. And then when I was older, I remember, as I grew up in Montreal, and I remember when Just for Laughs started, and I wasn't old enough to go to the bars and everything. So when I was old enough and I could afford it, I could save up, I would go to, shows here and there and everything. And I always wanted to do it. But I was too afraid. And then I considered it seriously when I was living in Toronto. And for about a 10-year period, I would look up a course like Second City or something, say, yeah, okay, I'm going to sign up, and then back out at the last minute. I did that on and off over the course of like 10 years and stuff.
Just those thoughts are such a killer, aren't they?
Oh yeah. And
those negative.
And the thing is, like, it didn't dawn on me then that the reason it keeps coming back is that it's something that's the universe's way of telling you need to follow this through.
It keeps shifting you back.
Exactly.
To it.
Exactly. Whatever, you can do all kinds of stuff, but it keeps coming back. And that's the universe's way of saying you need to address this. It doesn't, it's not going to be a determinant of what's going to happen, but it's just telling you need to address this. And I kept ignoring it, and also like circumstances, like I had gotten married, and I knew that my ex-husband wouldn't have been supportive of it, especially like the late nights and stuff like that. I knew he wouldn't have been supportive. Then we broke up and stuff, and I was like, now's my chance, but no, I'm still afraid.
You're like, shit, the fear's still there.
So like it was over the course of like 37 years that like I fought it, sort of thing. And it was after my mom passed away. I'd lost my father a few years before. And then my mom passed away 4 years after that. And then one of my best friends passed away. And so it was just a lot of change in my life. And I finally got to the point where I was like, I got tired of hearing myself say, I'm too afraid to do this, or
Mhm.
I can't do that. And there's really no basis to it. Like, fear is understandable, but to say that I can't do that about something I've never even attempted, like, it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
stupid, And I got tired of hearing myself say that. And so after my mom passed away, I'd moved to Ottawa. And there was just a whole bunch of changes that had happened. And I said, I'm going to do all the things that I've been too afraid to do over the last whatever years. And stand up was the top of the list. And so I signed up for a course I moved here in February of 2019. And I think I looked up the course in, I want to say, like, June or something,
Mm.
because I went to see Eliza Schlesinger. I can never say her name. I went to
No
see
one
Eliza
can.
Schlesinger because I was going through, like, just because I didn't know anybody. I was brand new here. I didn't know
Yeah, yeah.
anybody. And I saw that she was playing the NAC, and I'd watched all her specials, and I was like, oh, I'm going. And I got a ticket. I went by myself. I got a ticket. I sat, like, front row on the edge, on the aisle, and I watched her, and then it just got everything stirring up again. And I was like,
Mhm.
I have to do it. Like, it's something compelled me. So I remember going home looking for the course, and then I was like, okay, not going to start next week. I'm just going to push it. I remember I purposely, like, jumped ahead because I felt I was going to chicken out again.
Yeah,
So
you
I
wanted to
signed up
give
for,
yourself the time.
yeah, give myself to, like, ease into it. And then I actually told people. So I signed up for a course in August that ran for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And
You told
um
people, you said.
yes. Yeah, I had never I actually I told the first person I told was my friend Melissa, who I told when I was 15, that
Oh,
I wanted
that's
to do it.
amazing. That's a
Yeah,
full circle
because
moment.
yeah, it was a full circle moment, because I had signed up for the course, and then a couple of weeks later I had gone to Montreal for her 25th wedding anniversary. And when we had a quiet moment, I was like, oh yeah, by the way, I signed up for a stand-up comedy course. And Johnny, this woman looked me dead in my eye and went, it's about fucking time. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you've been, like, doing, and, like, it's the type of thing, like, you don't even realize that you're doing. She's
Yeah.
like, you've been, like, performing for us for, like, 40 years.
You know what's so funny is
You're
I
doing
was
all of
just gonna
this.
say that.
Yeah.
I think that comedians, when they talk about how many years they've been doing comedy, it has to start when you have that moment after making someone laugh and they
Yeah.
say, you should be a comedian. Or you think that, or you think maybe I should be a comedian, but you're 10.
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do at 10? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, but
Yeah.
you've been purposely trying to make people laugh since that age, and that's how
Yeah.
long you've been
For
a
40
comedian.
freaking years.
Yeah, so you're
Exactly.
technically a 40-year vet comedian. Just put that on your website. You'll book just for laughs tomorrow.
But what I found so
Yeah.
interesting about what she said is because I, like, my job, like, my day job is a web developer. So I've always been very technical and stuff like that. So my current job is I manage a website for a government department. Love it. But when I was in school, the internet as we know it didn't exist, sort
Mhm.
of thing. So I would, like, I could macro the shit out of an Excel file, like, make it do things so you don't have to repeat,
Yeah,
so you don't have to type the same numbers in, like, 14 different sheets. I could have it linked. And that's how I got my fix for that technical stuff. So like, I was doing that stuff with, like trying to automate, spreadsheets and Word documents and stuff, until, like, the technology caught up with what I wanted to do. And then when that
Mhm.
met each other and the internet, then I learned to code, and,
Yeah, you were
I
like
applied
perfectly
myself.
primed for it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Do
So
you
I
find it?
think,
So I'll let you finish, like.
yeah. So I think, like, I knew I was actively doing that I was getting my technical fix by
Mhm.
automating the shit out of, like, spreadsheets. But I didn't realize that that's what I was doing with comedy, that I was too afraid to go up on stage or to pursue it. So when I was in a comfortable environment, like I knew I could make people laugh. Like I knew I had that ability, and I knew that that's how I knew I had the ability to make people laugh. What I didn't realize until I started doing comedy and actually like writing out material, that that's how I always processed trauma or processed problems. Like I would try and look for like that silver lining, like as comfort, to be like to make it make sense, like to make something horrible make sense. I'd look at it like from a weird perspective. And I remember like my mom, mainly my mom, but my dad saying, you know, you can't make that funny. Like, this is serious. Like, why are you making jokes? Sort of thing. Like, what's wrong with you? That sort of thing. And I guess at the time they thought like I was just being silly, where I was trying to process.
No, that's why most comedians start into comedies, because they have a lot of trauma that they need to process, and laughter is the way that they do that, right? Like whether it's because most jokes start as like it's making you laugh, and then you kind of build it for an audience, and hopefully they laugh at it as well, right? You can kind of find some people in the room with the same style as humor as you. But I think it's interesting that you're a web developer. And I have this kind of weird thought all the time too, with because I work for Goalcast, which is like a media company, and it's all YouTube and Facebook and Snapchat, things that like when I was in high school didn't exist at all. Like there was no social media, thank God.
The
first little bit,
thank God.
like fuck, I made it through high school with no social media. I had like a Facebook page like the last year, and that was it. And you had to go on your computer and use Facebook.
It wasn't on your phone or anything.
You just look at it for 5 minutes and then go away. The phone was for texting and calling. That was it. Pictures were garbage. But like, so I never thought I'd have a job at one of these things that doesn't even exist now. Like, so what's it like going from knowing no internet to now you literally exclusively do stuff on this thing?
And like I'm much older than you, and like I didn't have the internet or Facebook. I was like on my second husband sort of thing by the time social media and stuff happened. Because I remember like say like the boom of it was like the early the early 2000s and stuff. And I was in my 30s. I was in my 30s. Like I got my first cell phone. I think I was like 29, 30, something like that. It was just giant Motorola StarTAC with the antenna and everything. And it was like $5.99 a minute. And you only had it like for emergencies, literally.
Oh my God.
Because you still had a landline.
It could only reach like the nearest police station.
Exactly. And like there was no camera on it. There was nothing. It was a phone, and it was giant. So it's just the fact that like I grew up I learned they brought computers into my high school when I was in grade 8, which would have been like early 80s, and they were so ridiculously expensive. Like I went to a private girls' school in Montreal, and they had 5 Apple. There were the Macintosh. That was called Macintosh. It was an Apple, but Macintosh. So it was the full, not Mac, just a full thing. And they had, I think, 4 or 5 of them, and we were 4 or 5 to a computer. That's how expensive they were. That's how new they were. And I was like, I'm trying to think, like, what did we even learn? Because there was nothing to connect to. There was nothing to connect to. So we learned basic, like the language catalog. I remember catalog to bring up the directory on your floppy disk and stuff like that.
I think for this reason, this point in history, when looked back upon like 100 years from now, is going to be like a really, really pivotal, interesting moment where you had people that had already gone through most of life without this thing, and then now all of a sudden they had, like, it's akin to like the invention of the car or electricity. Like you go from this whole generation that's like, no, we just go to bed when the sun goes down and we get up when the sun
comes up.
Yeah. Like I remember I listened to this, I don't know if they upload anymore, but it's a really great concept. It was called like the Pessimist podcast or something. And he goes over like old inventions and covers like what the other side was saying against it, like trying to get it banned, like everything from like top hats to electricity. The electricity one's the
TV.
craziest. TV,
Yeah.
like cars, but the electricity one was nuts because they wanted to put like lamps, like light posts out and just have them on so that you could see at night. And people were like, that's insane. Like,
Why do we have to see it?
we're gonna be blind. Like they were coming, they're like, I think it's like the devil's work. Like they were coming up with all kinds of reasons not to change
Yes.
their current environment. So
We have perfectly good candles.
yeah. What's wrong with the lantern?
Do you know the show Murdoch Mysteries?
Like
show-
peripherally. I don't think I've watched too much of it.
So it's one of my favorite shows. And one of the things I love about it is because it's set in the early 1900s. And so one of the characters, George Crabtree, he's got this fantastic imagination. So he's imagining, and that's part of the joke because he's imagining things that we have now. And everybody's like, oh my God, you're so when the police station got I think they call it a telephone box. It wasn't even like it was like outside.
Yeah.
And they had like 7 in the whole city of Toronto. So if anything happened, you ran to this thing and it connected straight to the police station. And he says, so he's doing his patrol with his partner. And he says, yeah, it's great. He's like, but I there's going to be a time where, we can carry that in our hands and we can call all over the world and everything. And his partner goes, don't be absurd. He's like, the horses will trip on the wires.
Yeah.
So he would say something like that, and somebody would be like there was one with coffee. Somebody had introduced coffee to Toronto, and he was like all jittery because he really loved it, and he gave it to Detective Murdoch, and he was like, no one's ever going to drink this, sort of thing. And it's just so funny. It's just so funny.
There's always that in life. You come across either optimists or pessimists.
Mm-hmm.
And the pessimists are needed because they're going to point out the flaws in your plan. And your plan is like, imagine all the wondrous things that could happen. You're so optimistic with everything. The pessimist is like, well, you still got to do X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think we're on to something with this podcast. So, a lot of good tidbits in here. I want to go back to you talking about comedians usually using trauma and transforming that into comedy. Do you have a process? Have you figured out a process right now for yourself for, taking either real life things that happen to you or just maybe like an absurd like observation about something, is there something that you've worked on?
Well, I have a couple of examples. Like I had a bit about microaggressions, and when I do that, I do it as like to educate people, because it's incredible how many people don't know what microaggressions are, and they don't realize like how harmful they are. So I had a bit that I used to do where I tell the audience that I deal with microaggressions daily. It's just part of my life, and I gave examples. And so one of the examples was like, oh, can I touch your hair? And it's like, no, you can't. I'm not a llama in a petting zoo. Don't touch my hair.
Yeah, this is a crazy ask. It seems like a macroaggression.
Exactly.
Can I touch you?
Can I touch you? Exactly.
No.
And then one that I've heard my entire life is when people say you don't sound black. And
or
it's like, what does that sound like?
You sound white.
Yes. Are you speaking white and stuff like that?
When they say you don't sound black, they're saying like they're trying. I think it's I think it's a weird, like, they're trying not to say that. They're trying to not state the obvious while somehow still stating the obvious
Stating
of
the
what they mean
obvious.
by that, you know?
Exactly.
You're like, you're not, you can,
Yeah,
you
you
can just
don't
keep
sound
some
like I
thoughts in
think.
your head, you
Yeah,
know?
you don't
Like,
have
it
to say everything. It's
doesn't have to
true.
always be a stream of consciousness.
Exactly.
I'm guilty of that, but not to that. I don't do it usually at people, you know, by requests or noticing their, it's usually about myself.
Right, right. You know,
God,
so
I got
I
so
would
much to
bring
do.
up this
Yeah.
thing, and you could see people like shifting, going, "Oh God, I think I've said that," and I would say why. I'd say, you know,
Yeah.
because it sounds like, you know, how am I supposed to sound? Why don't you, like, you've got some weird preconceived
Yeah.
stereotype of how I'm supposed to sound,
Yeah.
you know? And I said it makes it sound like I just learned to speak, you know, like that, like last week, because I said, you know, it makes it sound like I just learned to speak. And last week I was all like, you know,
Yeah.
clicking, like talking like clicks. And now I can, you know, I can use words now, sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, but I think the first time that, so, okay, the material that I was writing before was, say, stuff that happened to me like just throughout my life. But 2 years ago, I had an actual, um, like, um, like a current aggression happen to me, like a racist hate crimey thing
Jeez.
happened to me, and I did use it, um, to process. I did take like the skill I had at that point, in writing, and like writing bits to bring them to the stage, and I did it, and I did it very quickly. This happened on, like, I think, a Monday, and I performed it online because we were still in lockdown, and I performed it online on the Wednesday. And what had happened was somebody had seen me perform pre-pandemic, and in his words, I was too intimidating to talk to. So instead of being normal and talking to me, he decided to like kind of stalk me, sort of thing. So he would go to my website and like send messages or call and hang up. Like, it was just weird. I
That's
didn't
so
know.
weird.
It was so weird. And I'd get these calls in the middle of the night, and I didn't know who it was from or anything.
Yeah.
And then one night, so this was, say, over the course of maybe 6 or 7 months, that I was noticing these weird things happening. And it was a weekend night. It was pretty late, like maybe midnight or something. I was still up, and my phone rings. I don't recognize the number, so I ignore it. Phone rings again. Still don't recognize it. Still don't answer it. And then a text comes through, and it's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Who is this?" sort of thing. And the guy made up this ruse of that we had matched on a dating site
Oh
and
my
this, that, the
God.
other. And I don't really do the dating site thing. And he had said we had matched on Tinder. And at that point, I think I'd been on Tinder maybe 20 minutes. So I was like, I don't know, but
You're like, I only swiped on a fireman and a dude with a dog. So if you don't have those, I don't know you, sir. It was
Exactly. So
mostly
like
left swipes.
exactly. So it was just, it was something that didn't sit well with me, but I was like, maybe I forgot or whatever, but it didn't sit right with me, because if I'd given my phone number to somebody, I'd at least remember the name. Like,
Yeah.
said, "Oh, it's Glenn from XYZ." Oh yeah,
Did
okay,
you
I
have your
remember.
number on your site or something?
I did. I'd never
Oh,
had any issue
I fucked up
before.
like that too.
Yeah, I fucked up. I've taken it off since, but I fucked up.
Yeah, sorry, continue.
So even though he was like, "Yeah, we met, we matched last year," or something like that. And I was like, "And you're only calling me now? Like, what's that makes no
It's
sense."
not January, bro.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and then the conversation took a weird turn. I was like, "Okay, I'm out." So I blocked the number. And then the following night, the phone woke me up at like 3 a.m. Same thing, 2 calls and then a text. And he called me a fat N-word whore.
Oh my.
Yeah. Because
My
I rejected
Lord.
him. I rejected him, and he called me a fat N-word whore. He didn't say N-word. He used the full word with the hard R.
Can you
sort of
imagine if
thing.
he typed out N-word and then he's like, you know what I mean?
You know what I mean, like this. And so that was very like
Fuck.
violent and traumatizing
Yeah, of
and like
course.
horrible. And like I filed a police report and all of that stuff, but he used a dummy number, a dummy
Just
account.
so
Like they could,
unprovoked is what's insane.
yeah, that's
It's
the
like,
thing. Exactly.
that's
It's
mental
unprovoked.
illness.
Yes. And it's like, this is somebody you don't know. This is somebody you're intruding
Yeah.
into, you know what I mean? So I was so upset by it and I was so traumatized by it, and just trying to process it and trying to get through it, I wrote a bit. And
Mhm.
so in the bit, I explained what had happened. And then I dropped he called me a fat N word. I said the whole word whore, and like
Mhm.
the air gets sucked out of the room, like, like this. And I was like, yeah, he said I was fat. And that just
Yeah.
like broke the
Yeah. Yeah.
tension.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and like it felt good because I was like, that's funny, like that's fun. And I did it on an online show, and I got so many messages from other comics who knew what happened,
Mhm.
and then we're watching this because I think it was Jen Hayward's show. I think she was doing a fundraiser or something, and who were watching that and like messaged me right away, and they were like, that was fucking brilliant. That was like
Yeah.
the epitome of like tragedy and this, and I can't remember all the words, but I got a
Mhm.
lot of praise for that. And that was the first time that I really used what we do to process something that had just happened,
Yeah.
because before I was going back to things that had happened in the past and making bits about them, but that had like just happened. And
Yeah.
that was my way of processing it. And I did the joke for a couple of times, and then I dropped it just because I wasn't comfortable saying the actual word. Like I've had a lot of people say, that's a great joke, you need to bring that back and everything. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's a great joke, but I said I can't say the word.
You know what you
I
can
can't say it.
do? But again, like it's always at your artistic discretion, but you can get this the same, if not quicker input too, is if you just drop the word and you're going to get the same reaction. You can add anything else to it, right? As long as you start with what he says as fat, you can add anything else to it. And that's kind of the beauty of the joke. I feel like you were using that word because that's what was hurting you the most in that
Yeah.
moment.
Mhm.
But if you wanting to continue it as a joke structure, the reveal of that's what you were cared about is like undeniably funny. So adding anything after that will always still get the same laugh. It's not the word itself that's shocking them or getting the laugh, right? It's that there's just something a little worse than, like, you could be like fat, jobless, like, make stuff up
Yeah.
that he said, right? But make it worse than the word fat, so they forget about that word. Like,
Mhm.
I bet even if you carried on for like 7 words, they'd be like, oh my God, he called all this stuff. And then you're like, yeah. And then it
Yeah.
settles in. You're like, can you believe he called me fat? I mean, I've been doing, like, get mad that he called you and forget everything else. Like, and people just lose it, right?
Because the way I continued that joke was because once I said, yeah, he said I was fat, and that broke the tension, people would laugh, and then I'd be like, if he called me a fat whore or something, I was like, fine, understandable, yeah, I get that
Yeah,
sort of thing.
that's the funny part too.
Yeah.
You're like, you get mad at the fat part, and then you're like, the horror part I get. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, and then that actually, like, in my head leads more into your other bit of like, can you believe I'm single? And like, I have this, like, the no gag reflex thing, because they're so closely, if you're going off of the word, like the horror part I get, like you
Yeah.
could transition that perfectly into the next
Right into
bit, right?
that. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Try it. That's all I'm saying. Swizzles, she's coming. got some new material. There's a question that I always love to ask when I guest on the show too, is if you could make a phone call to 15-year-old you and give her a piece of advice based on what you know now, knowing that it won't even affect your current timeline. So nothing you say to her is going to change how your life currently is, but it might affect hers.
Oh, wow. I would tell her to be true to herself. Don't conform to, or don't like shapeshift to appease other people. But people like you.
Mm-hmm.
People will like you for you. You don't have to, I can't think of the word, but you don't have to mold to be what they want you to be or expect of you, that you're fine as you are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Especially like that. I get that 100%. I get a lot of different answers to that question when I ask it, which is why I love asking it.
He's
But
like, buy stock.
yeah, it's always shit like that. I'm like, it doesn't even make you rich. He's like, but I'm making someone else rich. Maybe he cuts me 15% through this weird time portal thing you got going on here.
Exactly.
You're like, I'm like, no, it's practical advice for someone out there right now who is young and they're looking at the future, right? And the non-conforming thing is, I always reflect on that. I'm like, man, I wish I just cared less about what people thought. I would have done so much more.
Me too.
If I
And
just
I
didn't
would
give a
have,
shit what anyone thought.
it's true. And
Yeah.
because that holds you back, because I think I would have done a whole lot of things sooner or on my own timeline, because it wasn't just fear. It was like, what will people think? Like, what will my parents think? What will my friends think? What will XYZ think? And instead of what do I think or what do I want, sort of thing. And I think the sooner people can do that for themselves, the better life will be for them. That they're doing things that they want to do, not because it's expected of them or that's what they're supposed to do, that they advocate for themselves.
Yeah, and have hope.
And have hope.
Bring it right
Exactly.
back.
Yeah.
Let's
Exactly. Hope that
how
that
we
you're going to be
started.
Okay.
I
Exactly.
love this too. I love starting and ending on the same
Full
word.
circle.
Full circle moments. But like looking ahead to the future of like comedy, what's something that you're like looking forward to the most?
You mean something that like I have coming,
Yeah, like just
or
something
that I
that
want
you're
to
like
do?
planning or that you're wanting to work on, or a goal that you're striving towards. Like what's the next step for you?
Well, right now I'm working on building like my time to about 30 to 45 minutes. I'd like to, hopefully by the end of the year, that I'm at least maybe 40 minutes. Um, Short-term goals that I'm always striving for is to keep getting booked on good shows, maintaining a good reputation, of being reliable and consistent and easy to work with and things like that. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to uh, do a festival in the summer. I got accepted to a festival in June that I applied to it last year. I didn't get in. I was disappointed, but I got in this year. So looking forward to that. So I'm like saving money to get there. That sort
Oh
of
yeah, those
thing.
festivals are usually always on your own dime, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I just my goal is to just keep, to stay creative and to keep writing and um to advocate for myself and um just be daring too, like not be afraid to try something out and not be afraid to fail.
Yeah,
That I get up there, I try something, it doesn't work. Okay, either I rework it or I move on to something else, but at least try,
it's
because it
not the
might
end of the
spark
world.
something else. It's not the end of
Yeah,
the world. Exactly.
yeah.
It's not
There's
the end of the
always going to
world.
be, there's always going to be
Right.
something there.
Right. And yeah, just to keep going,
So if you want to see Simone, go to simonecomedy.ca. You've got all the dates up on there. I'm sure you'll be posting the festival as well. _,
Yes.
Simone Comedy _ on Instagram, and all of the other social media links will be down in the description below. Simone, thanks so much for making time to come on the
Oh,
podcast.
thank you
Glad that we
for having me.
could get it all together.
Yes. Yes, me too. Thank you for
But for
having me.
now,
This was fun.
everybody, of course, I'll have you back on again soon.
I'd love that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
For now, everybody, make
Bye,
sure you hit that
everyone.
subscribe button, hit that like button, and until next time, I don't know, stay classy or whatever. Just do your best. Have hope.
You've been listening to The Johnny Rogers Show. New episodes air every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.